Welcome to Theme 9 of Participatory Fluency. In this theme, we're going to explore asking questions and the value in contextualizing different kinds of things that you want to know and that you want to inquire because of certain reasons. You may want to know because you're curious. You may want to know because it's part of your daily task, because it's required, because you're in a situation where you need someone's information, or it's a family situation and you want to make plans. It's a friendly conversation and you want to know what happened. There are many kinds of situations where we ask questions, and we are going to explore modes of asking. And the first thing I propose is a reflection on the difference between the verbs say and tell. When you say something, it's simply words coming out of your mouth. What you say and what you do are different things, and you can explore the differences between these things. You can even have arguments about these kinds of things. But in the end, saying something is simply putting the words out, while telling something is giving people information. When you want to say something to your boss about a particular situation, you may need to have a conversation with them, knock on their door and say something like, "Would you have some time to talk later today? I need to talk about certain things that are bothering me in my routine." Maybe you don't want to phrase it this way and you want to say, "Would you have some time to talk today? I need to tell you some stuff." And then by saying, "I need to tell you some stuff," this is a very generic sentence and which can be used in many kinds of situations. I need to tell you some stuff. A friend turns to the other and says, "I need to tell you some stuff." That implies that something happened and that they should be informed about what happened. It creates curiosity and it creates mystery. It creates an expectation. So the difference between saying something and telling something is very revealing. But there are also other kinds of situations where we need to pay attention to the modes of asking. The use of could is a particularly interesting one, because when you're asking for a favor, you will most certainly refer to the person using the word could. It could be something simple. You could be sitting on the lunch table and you could say, "Could you pass me the salad?" You're asking for a favor, but you're doing this politely. And by doing so politely, you are being more careful with the language you use. In these kinds of situations, paying attention to the modes of asking is important. And this is why we contextualize the situation, so you can have a full grasp of what's at stake when you use certain kinds of language and others not so much. If you just are sitting at the lunch table and you point out to the salt, and without saying a word, the person understands that you need the salad, and the person understands that you need the salad, okay, then you have a different kind of relationship. My dad does that to me all the time. I'm grabbing the coffee bottle, and he just points to the coffee bottle, saying implicitly that he needs the coffee bottle next. I grab myself some coffee, and my dad points out to the coffee bottle or to his cup. He's not saying, "Could you please put some coffee in my cup, please?" He is suggesting that I do this because it's a favor. It's not too much to ask, so to speak. But by constantly doing that, you create a challenging situation where people are not using formal requests anymore, and it becomes kind of a forced situation where you're just serving other people and not really being treated with respect. This could go a different way. The son could do the same thing, but I think it's much less common. You could find these kinds of behaviors at the workplace transformed into behaviors in the workplace. And then you could be printing out something at a printer, on a printer, and the person just hands something out to you and say, "Could you please take this to my desk?" and hands out a bunch of paper to you. And without saying a word, they just put the paper over in front of you, and you realize that they're asking you to put, as agreed upon, that sum of paper onto your desk. They contextualize it without words. So this is something that we need to be careful about. If you say it, "Could you please put it on my desk?" it's much more polite, and it creates a better kind of environment. It's not always necessary, but it's certainly something to keep trying to preserve so that the culture is more respectful. Another word that we can use is the word would. It's very common for people to say, "Would you mind doing this for me? Would you mind if I clocked up a little bit later today because I have a doctor's appointment," clocked in actually, which is the time when you arrive. In this situation, you're telling your supervisor that you need for some unforeseen circumstances, you're needing some extra time to take care of your stuff. So you ask, "Would you mind, is there a problem if I clock in a little bit later today because I have a doctor's appointment and it's really important?" They say, "No, I don't mind, it's okay." It's gonna be discounted on your salary though. And then you have another problem to solve, which is, well, you need to take care of your health and it's going to be discounted on your salary. It doesn't seem very fair. But if the companies don't pay for healthcare plans, it's very common these days. Actually, a lot of the companies are cutting benefits and cutting basic rights of the workers in the workplace. It's very common to find conditions of work that don't necessarily fit into people's expectations, and we have to all collectively push forward to better conditions for the workplace in the companies that are advertising for spots. Besides from that, would is used in many other kinds of situations. Would is a common verb to talk about hypotheticals. I would have really appreciated if you could do this for me. If you say this, you're saying, in other words, can you do this for me? But you're putting it in a certain way that sounds way more formal. I would really appreciate it if you could do this for me. When you say this, you're giving the person who is listening to you a much more serious tone than saying, can you do this for me? Because then it sounds very informal and very straight to the point. Of course, the use of imperatives is also important to mention, because some people just say, do this and do that. In immediate kinds of situations where you have to solve a problem at a specific time, immediately, you say, hey, please take this to your receptionist, and then ask her to call this client. Wrote down a number, call this number and ask if they're gonna be present today in the meeting. It's one of our employees. You can ask the receptionist to do something like that. Of course, they would have a register, but then if you wrote it down, you could have a kind of situation where you have this conversation with your receptionist. This is in office situations. In commerce in general, you can say, David, John, Peter, whoever it is. Peter, take this to the basement. We don't have a lot of space here. Peter, take this to the basement. We don't have a lot of space here. It's filling up the space and it's difficult to walk. And it's very common to see that these formal kinds of requests are cut short because we need to solve problems more immediately. It's not a question of arrogance, it's not a question of impoliteness, it's just a question of urgency. So these are things to pay attention to when you're talking about modes of asking.